So before we start with any style, we want to make sure that we are including this specific CSS attribute here. It's called box sizing, border box. So when you put this, what happens is any of your element, when you're trying to get the width of that element, you would get the width of that element including the padding and the margin. So including the padding and the margin. So you will get the true width of that element. So this is kind of like to level set all of the elements on which you will be applying your style. So please add this. Okay, so I want to see my call class. Okay, I'm going to show you what you shouldn't be doing. This is something bad that you shouldn't be doing. You don't want to hard code the width if you want to have a flexible design. So you, instead of pixel, you want to use percentage. Okay, and you want to decide like what that percentage is depending upon how many columns you want. So if the total width of a row is 100% and you want 3 columns, that is going to give you a 30%. So you want to say this will be 30% width instead of saying 150 or whatever it is, because depending upon the device, if you say it's 150 pixel, no matter what your device is, it is going to be 150 pixel and it may not be very user friendly. But if you say 30%, if your screen size is only 600 pixel, then it's going to divide that screen width into 3 and allocate that. Well, 100 is not a good number, but like if I want my div to be like 250 pixel each on a 1200 pixel screen, that would add up to 750. But on a smaller screen also, it'll add up to 750, so it'll like mess up your whole alignment. But if you're using a percentage, it would take the size that's available and apply the percentage on it. So that's much better. So before we talk further about that, so no, do not hard code width, especially for fluid design. Float left is going to force each element to stay on the left side. Okay, so that gives a hierarchy. One after the other, they'll be sticking to the next one, and that is what's going to create your columns for you. Okay, this looks fantastic, but these two suck really bad. I did not want this to happen to these two, right? So that is because even the float is getting applied to them also. So when I apply a float, unless I clear the float, all elements following that is going to get that. Okay, so for example here, I have this row and inside that I have all these guys. I applied a float, which means everything is getting a float. Okay, well, we don't want this guy to get a float or this guy to get a float, which means we have to clear the float. So any element within this row gets a float. Anything outside of this should not have a float. So let me focus on adding. So any element after should clear. So clear both. That will clear float left and float right. Then you want to add a content called blank so that a new small blank is inserted into the HTML. Okay. The third thing we want to do is we want to say display table. So anything inside here will be displayed as a table, not as a TRTD, but internally that is how it is recognized. And then this guy gets pushed to the next line as we wanted it to be. Okay, so let's just jazz this up a little bit. Okay, so it's applying a background color. When I hover over it, it changes that. Okay, so let's give it a margin. Okay, so those are my columns. I can increase my padding to make it nice and big. Okay, I can even like make the font weight to bold. See, now I have a 3 column, right? So let's say I want to go into my iPhone mode. These are getting scrunched and scrunched, but they are not going one after the. I want them to have a vertical alignment like this guy. I want it to look like how it looks in the veggies. I don't want it to have a column at all. And that is where the problem comes. Okay. So far all we have done is we have just created a column layout, and then we have applied some styles. We have not done anything to do with media queries yet. So now we got that. So let us say if you have a very small screen, the idea is we don't what is it that we want to change? Width should be 100%. See there? So when I go to a really small screen, it becomes 100% width each one of them. Okay, so all I had to do was add 100% width to the small screen. So let's apply this to this guy also. That's also a device. Let us say when we are in a tablet, we don't want it as 3 by 3, we want it as 2 by 2. That would give it 50%. Okay. Okay, so the problem is, see, this guy overrode everything else. These also come under this. Minimum width 768 is 992 also meets that criteria. 1200 also meets that criteria. Okay, so this default you can put that here for these two guys.